All right, welcome back, everybody, to the second episode of the Benchwarmers Sports Talk podcast. And once again, we are warming the bench for the Stanley Cup qualifier series. Although, as we'll talk about today, maybe with the performance of some of the teams, we won't be warming the bench for too much longer because they could be in need of some changes to the lineup. Once again, I'm Labi and I'm joined here by Jacob Bussey. Jacob, how are you doing today?
It's a tough pill to swallow today, lots of things to talk about, lots of people to yell at, but I think it's going to be a very interesting day today, and I'll pass it over to Labi. Labi, what are we starting with today?
Yeah, so this is being recorded on the Friday afternoon as what's being called Elimination Day, as there are 6 Game 4s happening today, and obviously with a best-of-5 series format, all of these Game 4s are potential elimination games, and also, with these best-of-5 formats, you're going to get the potential for some upsets because now you only need to win 3 games to win a series, and you're in a situation where if you get hot or get a couple of games here, it makes a huge difference. And so talking about those 6 potential elimination games, there are 3 big teams who are facing elimination tonight in the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Pittsburgh Penguins, and the Edmonton Oilers. And I think that that's probably a good place to start because those are the 3 teams sort of making most of the headlines, and it also helps that we have Penguins and Leafs fans here in myself and Jacob. And so I think we'll actually start neutrally and start with the Oilers. So they play Game 4 today against the Blackhawks. Obviously, Game 1, the Blackhawks came out of the gate really strong. Oilers rebounded by McDavid hat-trick to win Game 2. And then it looked like they were going to win Game 3, and then 2 late goals by the Blackhawks turned that one around. What's your take on the series? How do you think it's gone?
What I've noticed about the Oilers is that we know they can score. We know McDavid and Draisaitl obviously getting that hat-trick and Draisaitl getting 2 goals in Game number 3. So that's not the issue. I've always preached for Mike Smith, and obviously that first game just wasn't his game, and, goalies can go either way. They can be super hot or they can be super cold. It just wasn't good for him. Koskinen comes in Game 2, shuts the door. However, the problem is they still got 3 goals scored against them. Take McDavid's hat-trick away, we go in overtime. I think it's always been like this. It's McDavid and Draisaitl is the team, and then they have a maybe good hot streak with Koskinen or Smith. I predicted the Oilers were going to sweep. I no longer predict that. I think the Blackhawks will win tonight's game. I think the momentum they have going for them is it's great for them. Like, Ole Mata has 4 points in the 3 games, and we thought he was a pylon. Duncan Keith looks great. Jonathan Taves, Patrick Kane, Kubalik, and all these young rookies, they're definitely showing the colors. And Crawford has been lights out. Besides that one game.
We talked about Kubalik being a potential X factor, and I mean 5 points in Game 1 is certainly a way to announce himself.
It's a playoff record, so
yeah,
and so it definitely goes to show that sometimes we're good on guessing, or not guessing, but guesstimation on the players that are going to show up.
And I mean, I said that I wouldn't have been surprised if the Blackhawks veterans came out in Game 1 and really made a statement. And that's why I said Oilers in 4, because I thought that they would rebound past a Game 1 loss and take 3 in a row. Mm-hmm. And it looked like they were going to do that because Game 2 they looked comfortable. Game 3 they looked comfortable right up until the end.
Yeah.
But the thing I'll say is the thing I sort of say about a lot of sort of the big teams, and it's a question mark I have with the Leafs, and it's a question mark I had with the Penguins previously. It's a question mark I had with the Lightning. And it's, if you want to win in the playoffs, you have to be able to win the 2-1 hockey game, the 3-2 hockey game.
Exactly.
And the Oilers win was a 6-3.
Yeah.
And then they lose a 4-3 hockey game.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't think that the Oilers are capable, as they're built right now, to win a 3-2 game or a 2-1 game in the playoffs. And I think that this series has been very interesting because we look at a very good defensive forward in Jonathan Toews matching up against Connor McDavid.
Mm.
And I think that, McDavid, he can go out and get the hat tricks, and he's single-handedly carrying my fantasy playoff team right now. I have him and Nugent Hopkins, and they have 98% of my fantasy points this year. I renamed my fantasy team Mick Jesus Take the Wheel because he's the only guy. But I think the problem with that is he can get as many points as he wants, but he has to show a 200-foot game. And the thing that I like about these incredible players like the Bergerons and the Crosbys, and even now, sort of to a certain extent, the McKinnons. Matthews is working on it. Is they can play that 200-foot game, and McDavid is certainly capable of it. But I think that he's been schooled, frankly, by Jonathan Toews, and he's coming up against a more experienced, more defensive-minded, more a championship caliber right now player, and I think that that's really hurting the Oilers' chances here.
I agree, and I think McDavid is just score as many as you can instead of playing for the team. I think we see it not as often in other teams. That's why, when McDavid got the hat trick, he was like, after the game, oh, I didn't want the hats to be thrown on the ice. That's just a goal scorer. That's not a team player. If he said, oh, it was great, something like it was good for the team morale or something, like getting that goals, it was good, but we needed it for the team. Instead, he just said, oh, don't throw the hats on the ice. That kind of goes to show that maybe he's not Stanley Cup championship minded. Maybe he's more like score as many as I can, and if we win, we win. If we don't, then it looks bad on me. But either way, like, we can both agree that at least I think we can both agree that Chicago is going to win this series tonight.
Well, I mean, just looking at it from a statistics standpoint, if you have a 2-1 series lead and you only need one more win, it's like if a team was up 3-2 in the series, even if they were the underdog, like, I'd still favor them to win at least one of two.
Right.
And the other thing with, like I said, with this Edmonton team is obviously they have a history of underperforming with McDavid. They haven't really had much playoff experience, let alone playoff success. So I'd agree with you. I think that if any team is going to be able to close it out, it would be the Blackhawks because of the playoff experience sort of team that they have. And so I definitely agree with you. I think that I definitely favor Chicago to win at least one of the next two, which would be crazy to have a 5 seed in Edmonton get eliminated. But we could have both 5 seeds eliminated, as in just a couple hours from now, the Pittsburgh Penguins will be playing for their playoff lives as they are trailing 2-1 in their series to the Montreal Canadiens. And before I get into sort of my breakdown of how the Penguins have been playing the series, I'm interested to see what an outsider take on the series is. So, Jacob, what are your thoughts on the Penguins? And more importantly, maybe, what are your thoughts on how the Montreal Canadiens have handled the series?
You mean the Carey Price Canadiens? He's been lights out, and we both were worried or kind of wary of if a Carey Price gets hot, then it's over. The series is going to be done, and Carey Price has been lights out. And one of the first games, I think it was game 1 or game 2, Penguins had 12 shots in the first period alone, and Carey Price stopped all of them. That was a game when the Pittsburgh won because Montreal, he just couldn't take any more shots, and the defense just kind of gave up on him. This is a very interesting series in the sense that Pittsburgh has that experience. They have the cups, they have the rings, they know what it's like to be down. They understand that sometimes it's good to be down. It humbles you a little bit. And Montreal maybe it will be one of two mindsets. One is this is easier than we thought, or B, okay, we can't let up. We have to fight just as hard as we did. My whole issue has always been, and Labi, you know this, is I've never really trusted Murray in net. You know this. It's nothing personal. It's just I've never really trusted his game, which is why, and I think a lot of fans is why they want him out. It's because they've never really trusted him. Aside the fact that he's won a Stanley Cup twice in his rookie years, which doesn't make any sense to me. However, Jari's in net tonight. It has been confirmed by the Penguins, so it'll be definitely a good sense of maybe a humbling experience for the Penguins. Maybe like, okay, this isn't a joke. We can't take this we were all making fun of Montreal for being in. Now they're ahead of us. This sucks. We have to bounce back, and if we don't, we're done. Golf season will come a little earlier than we had hoped for. Labi, as a Penguins fan, I know this must be a little stressful for you, considering you were arguably thinking Montreal would have been an easier series than this. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'm honestly at the point now where I'm kind of over the series, to be honest, for a couple of reasons. And I think that the big thing is, obviously, this is just the play-in round. So even if we find a way to win back-to-back games against Montreal, move on to the next round, the way that the round-robin tournament's been going, it'll be Washington or Boston in the first legit round of the playoffs. And even if we somehow play up to our potential and get back in this series and win the series, the way that this team has played, I do not think we could even compete with a Washington or compete with the Boston. And I think that there's almost no point in going up against a series like that. And I'd almost rather take that 12.5% chance at Lafreniere. Because I think about it and I'm like, okay, if we lose, we have a 12.5% chance at Lafreniere. Do I think we have a better than 12.5% chance at beating Washington or Boston? And the way we're playing, I genuinely, maybe 10% or fewer. And that's just the first round, right? So then we'd have a potential second round, third round, fourth. So really, I give our odds at winning the Stanley Cup as we're at right now of like 1%, 2%. So why wouldn't I see a 13% chance, give or take, at Lafreniere as more favorable?
So what do you see the biggest issues right now with Pittsburgh at the way they're playing?
I think there's a lot of issues. I think that goaltending is actually the least of our concern. Like, I personally do trust Murray in the net, but I also trust Jari in the net. So when they announced that Jari was in net, I didn't really care about that announcement. I'm waiting for the roster announcement to come out because Jack Johnson needs to be a healthy scratch. Mm-hmm. And Jack Johnson needs to not play for the Pittsburgh Penguins ever again. And I understand we're paying him $3 million a year, but it's honestly more embarrassing if a team refuses to acknowledge that someone isn't playing well. Like, I'd rather them say, look, we gave this guy a contract, but it didn't pan out, so we're going to scratch him, than for the team to say, well, we're paying him $3 million, so he has to play in the lineup. And here's some stats about Jack Johnson in this series. And then I'm going to go on about how it's, like, I'm not single-handedly blaming Jack Johnson.
Right.
Because the team outside of him hasn't been good either. But you listen to some of these statistics, and it starts to make sense that, Jack Johnson is a big reason why they're doing so badly in this series. Mm-hmm. So Matt Murray's save percentage in the series, with Jack Johnson on the ice, .750. With Jack Johnson off the ice, .950.
Wow. That's ridiculous.
In Game 3, Montreal had controlled 86% of the expected goals with Jack Johnson on the ice. By comparison, the Crosby line had controlled 75% of the goals chances in favor of Pittsburgh when they were on the ice.
Wow.
Penguins 5v5 goals against with Jack Johnson on the ice, 5 goals against in 33 minutes. Penguins 5v5 goals against with Jack Johnson not on the ice, 2 goals against in 98 minutes.
My goodness.
And Pittsburgh's being outscored 5-1 with Jack Johnson on the ice, and they are outscoring Montreal 6-2 with him on the bench. So I understand that it's not just one player, but he's a -4 for the series on top of all of that, and it starts to become pretty blatantly obvious that if there's one sort of common denominator between all of this, it's that whenever something goes wrong, Jack Johnson seems to be on the ice. And he made 2 mistakes in Game 3 that cost us the game. And yes, the 4th goal was a bit soft, and Murray probably should have made that save. But, Johnson made 2 mistakes, Murray made 1, and the Game 1 goes to overtime. So it's frustrating because, if Jack Johnson isn't playing in the lineup and our power play is able to, that's the other thing, our power play has been terrible. Then, frankly, we could have swept this series. If we go 1 for 7 in Game 1 on the power play, if we score one more goal, that game doesn't go to overtime, or if we score on the power play we have in overtime, or if we score on the penalty shot, or if we score on the 5-on-3. So I'm not blaming Jack Johnson for Game 1. That, as a team, we didn't get it done. But Game 3 was on Jack Johnson. And Game 3 in a best-of-5 series is huge. And so if I'm the coach of the Penguins, Jack Johnson's a healthy scratch. You get Juuso Riiko in the lineup. Also, I don't know why they decided to scratch Jared McCann when Patrick Marleau has done absolutely nothing. And, I get it. You make roster decisions for a reason, but you don't have to die by your decisions if they're the wrong decision. Like, you signed Jack Johnson, it didn't work out, bite the bullet, bite your pride, and scratch him. You trade for Patrick Marleau because you think he's going to be a good veteran piece. It's not working out. You scratch him. This is a very deep team. You can get guys like McCann, Evan Rodriguez, Sam Lafferty into the lineup and give you something different. Because why is our coach so quick to pull Matt Murray, but isn't so quick to pull the same players who aren't showing you? And Murray's been good this series, and he's still getting pulled. Mm-hmm. So why wouldn't you pull a guy like Marleau? Why wouldn't you pull a guy like Johnson? And so because of that, I think it's almost better that we get eliminated by Montreal because it's going to force management to make decisions because the fan base isn't going to be satisfied with losing to Montreal in the qualifier rounds, and it's going to force them to make a big decision.
Right.
And there are already people calling for the core to get blown up and maybe trade Malkin for draft capital. And I disagree with that. I think that's a bit too extreme. But I think that something needs to be changed because it's clearly not working.
I agree, and it's a little unfortunate for guys like Crosby, who and Marlowe, who's never won a cup, and he went on a little bit of a hot streak before the pause happened. So it's not like he was like a pickup at the time. He was a great pickup, but he's not doing anything right now. And right, it'll make management think a lot about what's going to happen. Like, what's our future? Is Mike Sullivan going to be the coach next year if they get eliminated by Montreal of all teams, like in the first round? So it's definitely going to bring up a lot of questions, and I think it'll be a very interesting offseason if Pittsburgh does in fact lose tonight.
But I will say this, obviously, happy birthday to Sidney Crosby. It's his birthday today.
Yeah,
He's
happy birthday.
Playing on his birthday. And so this is what I mean. Like, the Penguins can't let down their captain like that. I'm expecting Crosby to play well because he normally does anyways, especially on his birthday.
Exactly.
People are joking he's going to get 8 goals and 7 assists. I definitely wouldn't be against that. But I'm really hoping we can at least win Game 4 on his birthday. And then Game 5 is anything can happen type of game. But I'm not confident at all. And speaking of being not confident, the last big shock of a team that is facing elimination are the Toronto Maple Leafs. So obviously Game 1, they get pretty much dominated.
Yep.
Don't win that one. They rebound with a very good Game 2. If it wasn't for the goaltending performance of Korpisalo, they probably could have been up 4-5-0 in that game.
Could argue more.
They finally broke him down into the second period and were able to come away with a shutout victory. And then it looked really good in Game 3, up 3-0. And then Pierre-Luc Dubois happened, and his hat trick with the third goal coming in overtime to win the game sees the Blue Jackets go up 2-1. They play also tonight, back-to-back situation for them with the Leafs facing elimination. A lot of people were confident that they would break their 16-year playoff series drought, but if they're going to want to win a playoff series, they're going to first have to send it over to Game 5. Jacob, diehard Leafs fan, your thoughts on the series so
far? Game 1 and 2 were fun to watch, even though the Leafs lost that first game. That was still a great game, a lot of potential. It was very different. The Leafs are very offensive set. The Jackets are very defensive set. So it was definitely a good clash of differences. I could argue we could have won that first game if Freddie made that save. Obviously not his fault. He was lights out. Game 2, huge bounce back. Matthews gets a goal. Tavares gets a breakaway goal. Riley gets a goal in the empty net. 3-0. Good win. Last night was Game 7, 2013 repeated. Up 3 goals, lose it in overtime. Different circumstances. That was a Game 7. This was a Game 3. When the power play scored, Nylander scored on the power play, and Robertson got his first, and CC scored off an absolutely terrible deflection off Seth Jones' knee. 3-0 going in. It was 3-1 going into the third. We're on the power. The Leafs are on the power play. About a minute and a half to go, and they do nothing. Okay, fine, whatever. That's cool. And then the Jackets come. They score. I believe that was Pierre-Luc Dubois scored his second of the night there. No, he didn't score then. Someone else scored. Doesn't matter. Anyways, 3-2. About 7 minutes to go. It's okay. It's just 7 minutes. All you have to do is hold off. Pierre-Luc Dubois comes on the 2-on-1. Rips it past Freddie's blocker,
great shot.
It was an excellent shot, but it shows a weakness in Freddie. His blocker has been scored on multiple times this series, so it kind of shows that he needs to work on that a little bit. His glove is absolutely beautiful, and he snakes them like it's nothing. 3-3, goes in overtime. I have my hair on the floor, no longer in my head. And then a bad pinch by Dermott, and it leads to a breakaway and an absolutely beautiful goal. I will give Dubois credit for that.
And I give Texier credit on winning the puck off of Tavares. And the one thing I will say about the Blue Jackets is their role players have been very good, and Texier has been absolutely everywhere. I don't think I've seen him lose one loose puck battle all series.
Yeah, well, he's lost a few, but it's been to guys like Tavares or Matthews, like big names, like names that should be winning those without hesitation or without, and so Jackets win 4-3 in overtime, up 2-1 in the series. They're in a good spot. Leafs got a lot of questions around them. What is going on? That's as a Leaf fan and as I speak for a lot of Leaf fans. What the hell was that? It's like drinking and drinking, having a good time, waking up, and you're hungover to the point where you don't believe that you're hungover so bad. 3-0 at one point, Leafs. It was 3-0. Okay, you have a stellar goalie in net, can't save every single shot. So CC, you got to do some plays. You scored one goal, and granted, it was a cheat. It was a very greasy goal. It's a goal nonetheless. Okay, so now you got this confidence because everyone's been bashing you for the season because you play like garbage. You were a -1 that game 3. Okay, so that means you were on the ice for 2 goals. Okay, so now explain to me how you're on the ice for 2 goals against you when you could have done something about that. The third line has been absolute trash, aside from Robertson, who has shown a lot of potential. Kapanen, what are you doing? Every time I see you with the puck, you give it up, you turn it over, you're not skating hard enough, you're not winning those battles, you're not doing anything. Okay, so you need to be scratched, and we could bring someone else for that. Kerfoot is winning faceoffs in the defensive end, and I appreciate that. You're not scoring, you're not getting any assists. That line is garbage. The fourth line looks better. Clifford has some good opportunities, and Clifford is a fighter. Clifford is an enforcer.
He's shown that hit was huge.
It was a massive hit, and it goes to show that he had, that fourth line with Engvall and Spezza, thank you, have shown absolute great potential. And then you look at the third line, and you're like, you guys are on the same team, are you sure? And then you go to the second line with Tavares, Nylander, obviously getting a goal last night, which is a huge confidence booster, and Mikheyev, which didn't really do a lot last night. I like Mikheyev, but he's kind of been playing awful. I can argue it was his injury, but Riley's out there playing like a madman, like Matthews is playing like a madman. And then you go to the first line, Marner, Hyman, and Matthews. Hyman needs to get off that first line. I don't know what he's doing there. He's not winning puck battles. He's not going to the net. I would be very content if you put either Mikheyev or you put Nylander back on that first line.
Another skill player. And that's the thing I don't understand, because the Leafs and the Penguins both have that issue of with the Leafs, you have 2 excellent players in Marner and Matthews. And then you throw a third guy who doesn't really sound like he belongs in Hyman. Same thing with the Penguins. You have Crosby and Gensel together with Connor Sherry.
Which is weird.
Which doesn't feel like because considering he was a healthy scratch in Buffalo before they traded for him back.
Yeah.
And now he's on the first line. And Hyman was always, in my mind, seemingly that third line grit and grind type of player. And, you're expecting him, I guess he's got speed, but you're expecting him to, make hockey plays equal to that of, Marner, who's arguably a top 5 playmaker in the league, Matthews, who's arguably a top 5 sniper in the league. Like, it's going to be hard for a player like that to try to stick with that first line.
The reason why they have Hyman on, and the only reason I can see it, is because he's one of the only people who's not afraid to go to the net, get dirty. But when you have a line with Matthews and Marner, who are playmakers, and who are snipers, well, maybe not so much Marner, but Matthews, we don't need that in front of the net guy. And if we do, we need him to start making some plays, because on the power play, they heavily rely on that Matthews shot. He's fanned on it a few times. He's not had that opportunity, which goes to show Columbus's, adaptability. When you're getting paid how much you're getting paid and you're not performing, Marner is doing great, Matthews is doing great. Then you look at Tavares, he's winning a lot of faceoffs. Dubois could not win a faceoff against him for his life. But who won the game in the end? You can win all the faceoffs you want. You can go 10 for 10, you can go for 30 for 30. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, are you going to perform? Are you going to score? Is Mikheyev going to show up this year? Is Kapanen going to do something? Are any of these guys going to do something? And that is why they will not win tonight. This is what happens for the past, every single playoff. 2013, you choke, you lose. 2016, granted, it was Washington, you weren't expected to do anything, you lose. 2017, all right, we're back in, you lose. Game 7, 2018, you're back in. Finally, redemption, you lose. 2019, back in again, you lose.
Yeah, but I think the big storyline here is all those other years have been against Boston, and then the one year against Washington where, like you said, that was almost seen as like a bonus. They weren't really expected to do anything, and they played Washington really hard. So I get rid of 2016 because I think Leafs fans look at 2016 as a good series, because a lot of the games went to overtime, and they were playing against a team that they knew was much better than them. They weren't expected to do anything, and they battled. But all the Boston series, you can argue that they not should have won the series, but that they could have won the series. It was very evenly balanced, and you could see it going either way. And the thing with that is, fair enough, you're not going to win them all, but it almost has the feel of those old Pittsburgh-Washington series, where it goes in and you feel like on paper it could go either way, but one team just kept getting it done. And I think the thing with Toronto is they would always use that as a potential excuse. Boston's an elite team. Boston's an elite team. And it's true, they are an elite team.
But you're in the playoffs. You're already an elite team for making the playoffs.
Absolutely. And I think the big question mark here now is, it's like, all right, Toronto, you're not playing an elite team. You're playing a good playoff team in Columbus, but not an elite Stanley Cup contending team.
Yeah, what's your excuse?
Exactly. So prove to us that the reason you were just short against Boston was because they're another elite team and you just couldn't get over that hump. Because if they play the way they play against Boston in those 7-game series, Columbus doesn't stand a chance.
No.
So do you think it's, like, what do you think it is? Do you think it's they're playing down to their opposition, or do you think that there's just something about this team where they can't get it done in the playoffs?
Both. They're too arrogant. They thought Columbus would be easy. Granted, Columbus is the 9th seed and Toronto is the 8th seed. They're not that far apart, so they shouldn't have been playing like they're 5th and 12. And they choke. Every year it's the same thing. It's the hope. You make the playoffs. Okay, we're in. Thank goodness. And then you ruin and destroy all of Toronto's hearts. And it's going to happen like this if Matthews, if Marner, if Tavares, if Freddie, arguably, if they don't get it together, and our defense core with Muzzin out is definitely taking a huge
Muzzin is
pull.
a big blow.
Justin Hall
Yeah.
is good, not great. Riley is elite and will be one of the best defensemen that played on Toronto. That never wins a cup. To Dermott has promise. He's a lot of promise. Still not there.
Mistake prone, but he's young.
He's young, so he's got some years. If he can develop like Riley, then it'll be okay. Barry, I was excited when we picked up Barry. I really was. I was pumped because I've watched some of his highlights. He's an offensive defenseman. Okay, good. Riley can cover for him. Yeah, Barry's done nothing. And Barry throughout the whole season has been question mark after question mark.
Well, yeah, and especially considering that you trade Nazem Kadri. Now, granted, maybe Kadri isn't a player that the Leafs necessarily need anymore because they're so loaded offensively. So the trade made sense at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But, you are losing a big offensive piece in Nazem Kadri. So
exactly.
you expect the defender that you get back to deliver. And, Barry's been dropped down to that third line.
Yeah,
and you don't want to trade a very valuable center piece, like a good trading piece for a defenseman who ends up getting dropped to that third line. Like, you want him in your top 4, given what they gave up to get him.
Exactly. And then finally, we have my favorite defenseman of all time, Cody frickin' Ceci.
I mean, he's better than Zaitsev for 4 more years or whatever that contract was.
You know who he is? He's Jake Gardiner with a different number on.
Yeah.
He is absolute garbage. So what? You scored a goal. You scored a goal short-handed. You shot it from the point. If Jones doesn't deflect that, that's not a goal. We lose in regulation. How do you feel about that? Does that make you feel better that you lose in regulation instead of overtime, instead of having that extra chance? No, it doesn't. You have been, if you heard this, I'm speaking to you directly. You have been absolutely garbage this entire series. You've been garbage for the whole season, I would argue, of 2019-2020. 4 months without you was probably the best thing that happened to this Leafs team. And now you're back on the ice, and now it shows why Ottawa failed. Now it's showing why Toronto's failing. This is why you will not get re-signed into Toronto. This is why you will go somewhere else to a team like Buffalo, or you will fail in a team like Detroit, because you need to go on a team that is to your level.
Yeah, and I think that basically sums it up. I think that a lot of Penguins, Oilers, and Leafs fans will be very frustrated and very nervous going into tonight. But speaking of Jake Gardiner, we'll just quickly pan over to maybe some more positive Eastern Conference stories.
Mm-hmm.
And Jake Gardiner and the Carolina Hurricanes have looked very good, and they swept the New York Rangers 3-0 in that series.
You know what? That was a shock to me. That was a huge shock that they swept them.
And, I don't want to sort of hype myself up here, but I said Canes in 4, and I was debating going Canes in 3, and I picked the Hurricanes as my underdog team just because I kind of expected this type of performance from them. And, I mean, maybe I didn't expect that first line for Carolina to be as good as they were.
Oh, they were dominant.
I think that's a big story. Aho, Svechnikov, and Teravainen have been absolutely incredible over those 3 games.
And you can argue they have one of the best, if not the best, defensive core in the league.
And
right
that defensive core was outstanding. And you forget the kind of names that are on there. And this is with the injury to Dougie Hamilton, who now has time to rest and get ready.
Exactly.
So you have Hamilton, you have Vatanen, you have Gardner. You have Fleury,
Yep.
you have Pesci.
You have all these different guys, and then you look back at their goaltending, and Mrazek and Reimer were absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, they both played very well.
I've liked Reimer because of 2013. He took us to the playoffs, and I kind of feel like he was pushed out of Toronto, which is not his fault. Kind of bounced around in San Jose, and then he came to Florida for a few years, and then he found a home. Then he found a home in Carolina. Did you watch that third game?
I watched all of the.
You watched the saves he made, that one sequence?
The stick save was incredible.
So, Reimer is showing that even at his age and his, being pushed around, like, they don't have to worry about goaltending. You can put either one of them in.
I think that Carolina is pretty, like, offensively, they show that their first line can score and that their depth can pick them up. I think defensively, they're, like I said, even last week, defensively, they're one of the deepest teams that are in the playoffs. And the goaltending proves that they can be good enough to have this team be a real thorn in the side of one of these other teams. And Carolina, as it stands right now, are most likely going to play either the Lightning or the Flyers.
I think those are going to be more very interesting series.
I like the Lightning matchup.
I
think the Flyers will be and we'll talk about. I think the Flyers have looked incredible. As much as I hate to admit it, they're looking really good at potentially.
They're 2-0 in the round robin.
Yeah, they're looking at potentially being the team that comes out of the East. But I think that if the Lightning were up against the Hurricanes, I think that it would be very difficult for Tampa to get through that. Not saying that they wouldn't. I think that Tampa would still be the favorites. But I would expect the Hurricanes to push them pretty intensely in that series. And then also, actually, this game going on right now as we speak.
Still 3-1, 15 minutes to go in the third.
Yeah, third
Islanders
period.
are leading 2-1 in the series, 3-1 in the game.
So it looks like the Islanders will also be moving on. And this is another one where I believe we had different predictions. I believe you took the Panthers. And,
I took the Panthers. You took the Islanders.
I took the Islanders in 4, which looks like it's going to happen.
I took the Panthers in 5, and it's not happening.
And I think that the thing that I'll say about this is that this is, once again, that whole system. And it's the reason why I took the Blue Jackets in 5, because I know that the Leafs were more talented, and I wouldn't have been surprised if they pulled it off. But I think that Blue Jacket system has been really frustrating, and I think that the Islanders system has been very frustrating. And the one thing I will say about the Panthers is that Sergei Bobrovsky, who was a big question mark going in this series, has been outstanding. He's been playing up to Sergei Bobrovsky's potential. And despite that, the Panthers are still struggling to hang on to the series.
Yeah.
And they're going to lose this series most likely. Like I said, the Panthers have about 15 minutes to get a couple goals to get back in the game. But it looks right now like the Islanders are going to win the series in 4, despite Sergei Bobrovsky standing on his head right now. And I think that's going to be a wake-up call for a lot of teams that are going to have to play the Islanders, because they're not going to be they're going to be a tough out.
Yeah, don't take them for granted. These guys have definitely shown time and time past, like they're definitely someone to be worried about.
Oh yeah, they swept the Penguins last year.
Yeah,
Trotz is a 2-time Jack Adams winner,
Stanley Cup winner.
Yeah, and they looked very good against a Panthers team that a lot of people thought might make a little bit of noise here in the bubble, and it looks like they're going to go down without too much of a whimper.
Yeah, too much. Yeah, I think Panthers are just overrated, and I think I kind of gave into that, and good for you for probably going to predict this one right. So far, you're.
I hope so, but
who knows? Panthers have come back a few times from 4-0 deficit, so anything's possible.
You never know. You never know, I think that's what it comes down to when we talk about sort of making these predictions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that people sort of underestimate the power of having a good system and having good, team chemistry, team depth, and it's something that I think. Maybe I tried seeing into it a little bit with the Islanders and the Blue Jackets, but you probably could have seen into it a little bit more. And, looking at the way that even like the Penguins, for example, have played, and I just naturally thought that the talent disparity would help the Penguins. But, I mean, it doesn't matter how talented you are. If you don't have a system, if you don't have the right mechanics behind you, it's going to be very difficult to win. And,
exactly.
It's not like I'm not saying I would have picked the Habs or would have voted against the Penguins,
right.
But I think that maybe we were a little too harsh on Montreal to be coming out here and saying that they didn't have a chance, or for a team like the Blackhawks to say that they didn't have a chance. And
right.
I think that that's something that we are realizing here in the bubble.
Well, at the end of the day, NHL play like playoff teams. Like these are guys that have been playing here and they have the experience and they're in the playoffs. Like they play in the NHL, which is one of the hardest places to get into in the first place. So they already have the talent, unless you're Cody Ceci, but or Jack Johnson. But it's going to be an interesting game that too. Let's talk about the Coyotes for a bit. Let's look at how Darcy Kemper's absolutely stood on his head. What a stud! Do you start Pecorine in net for Game 4?
Well, here's the big question, and actually, as I talk about the Coyotes, we can probably check that because we're about 15 minutes away from puck drop.
Oh, they start at 2:30?
They start at 2:30
okay.
In Game 4 here between the Nashville Predators and the Arizona Coyotes. UC Staros in the net for Nashville, confirmed 7 minutes ago by the Nashville Predators Twitter.
Okay, they kept them in.
So UC Staros will get the start as the Predators face elimination. We both had the Predators winning in 5 in this series.
Nope, I had the Coyotes.
Did you have the Coyotes?
I had the Coyotes in 5.
All right, there you go.
I think you guys can go listen to the one and then
call
me out.
I know I definitely took the Predators.
All right.
But I think so. Then I guess I'm only speaking on my behalf, where I was, I think that this Coyotes team has a lot of talent, but I just didn't want to. I was hesitant to pick them because I didn't think that they would put it all together in a playoff package.
They look like a playoff. Like Taylor Hall's already got a few goals. Connor Garland's
They look all right.
They look. You know what? They look like Columbus to me. They look like everyone take them for granted. You're going up against a skilled team in Nashville, and then you come out swinging and you swing for the fences.
But the other thing I will say is that I think that Nashville could send this to a 5th game and win this.
I disagree.
Because you look at Game 3, and Nashville gets the first 12 shots of the game, and then the first shot for the Coyotes is a goal. And the shots after the first period of that game, I think, were 20-6 for the Predators. And the score is 1-0 Arizona. And we've seen that. We saw in Game 1 between Pittsburgh and Montreal, the shots were like 18-6, and Carey Price kept his team in it. We saw in Game 2 between the Blue Jackets and the Leafs, Korpisalo kept them in the game until finally the Leafs were able to break them down. So we've seen instances, and I think even in, for example, the round-robin game yesterday, the Vegas Golden Knights were out shooting the Blues. I think it was like 40-20 at the end of the game.
That game was nuts.
But the Blues were in the lead. And Vegas had to come back and they ended up winning that game. But we've seen cases where one team gets really hot and goes on a big streak of shots, but they can't capitalize on those chances. It doesn't matter.
Like, you can take all the shots in the world. If they're not good shots or they're not going in, then it doesn't matter.
And that's the thing, though. I think that if the Predators can get that dominant start again, like I think if the Predators outshoot Arizona 12-0 again at the start of this game, they're going to get at least one. I think that the Predators, they've been a playoff experienced team. They know what it's like facing elimination. So I think that they will really challenge Arizona. But at the same time, I do have to give credit to Arizona. They've looked pretty good. And it looks like they've bent, but they haven't been able to break in those circumstances. And
look at Darcy Kemper.
Yeah, and their goaltending's been stellar.
Yeah, it's excellent. And it was actually surprising. It's Aiden Hill in backup, not Antti Raanta. So maybe some concerns about his future.
Some injury concerns
on where he's going to be in the future.
Yeah, definitely.
We all know that Kemper is the guy. That is the guy. There's like the Anderson. That's like, well, not Murray, but that's like the Carey Price. Like these are like all these guys. Vasilevsky, Carter Hart. These are all guys who are guaranteed the spot. He was kind of the backup on a lot of teams. He was with the Wild in 2014. Won the round there. So he's got some playoff experience and playoff victories. So I think they're going to win tonight. And to your point where if Nashville goes on a flurry of shots, I think Kemper stands strong, and I think he holds his ground, and I think the defense is good enough. I think this is the year. This is the year out of all years that Ekman-Larsson has a chance at the Cup.
Yeah. The one thing I will say is that the responses to the announcement that UC Saros is in net, pretty mixed. There are a lot of people who are calling for Rinne to get the start because of his experience.
Well, Saros is just not good. He looked shaky. He doesn't look like he's the goalie that he was maybe a year ago or even in the season. He just kind of doesn't look like he's all there. And
yeah.
I know a lot of it can be argued that they're just not scoring enough, but that's not an excuse. Like the same with the Leafs. They're not scoring enough. That's not an excuse. Like, you need to stop shots. And UC Saros just isn't stopping shots. Granted, a lot of the shots, like that Taylor Hall shot, should have been saved. That was a very sharp angle shot, like a Jeff Petrie shot, and it still wasn't saved.
Yeah.
So That's going to be a good series. Let's talk about the win last night for the Calgary Flames.
Yeah, and I was going to say there are two other series in the West that we still need to talk about,
Yep.
and one of them is the Calgary Flames are the second team after Carolina to advance, and they will be moving on to the proper first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. And I think that we'll both sort of have similar conclusions on this one. We both thought that Winnipeg would win the series,
Yeah.
but obviously, if you would have asked us about 10 minutes into Game 1 when Scheifele and Laine go down for the rest of the series, that maybe we would have changed our answer. And
which we did. I did. I looked at it. I said, okay, the series is over. You lost your two best players.
Yeah, and I think that, Hellebuyck played well like we thought he would.
We knew
but, we already made a comment about how this Winnipeg team was lacking depth.
Yeah.
And we thought that Calgary still wouldn't quite be good enough to make up for that, and that Winnipeg's talent, like high-end talent, would see it through.
And the questionability of the Calgary netminder Talbot in net, who is kind of not great over the season.
Yeah, he played well.
He played excellent. He has shocked me. He looks like 2017 Edmonton stand on my head Cam Talbot. He has looked fantastic. He looks in shape. Like David Riddick has looking at him like, okay, yeah, I can understand why he's in net. He had a shutout that last game, which was absolutely stunning, 28 or 38 shots, something like that. So, it goes to show that Calgary this isn't the year to be messed with. Maybe this is it.
And I think the other big thing is that I was just looking up the stats here. Sean Monahan with 6 points in the series.
Huge.
Lucic had 4.
Quick update.
Yep.
Islanders just scored again. It's 4-1.
4-1 Islanders. So it does look like they will move on and be the third team to progress. But yeah, Lucic with 4 points. Monahan with 6.
Lucic with 4 points. Wow.
Elias Lindholm and Johnny Gaudreau, Sam Bennett, all with 3 points. So you're starting to see production from guys that you expect to produce who hadn't produced in the playoffs last year.
Well, look at that whole line. Gaudreau gets no points. Kachuk gets 2 goals, and Monahan and Bennett get 1 goal apiece.
I think they had maybe 4 points combined in that whole series. And you look at this year now, Gaudreau, Monahan, and Kachuk combined, I think if my math was correct, looking at it with 11 points.
Something like that.
In this
11
series.
points in 4 games is going to win you a playoff series.
And so I think that if we look at what we said the storylines were going into this series, we said that the Calgary Flames top end was going to have to produce, their goaltending was going to have to hold up, and Winnipeg, Hellebuyck was going to have to stand on his head, and they were going to have to get top end performances from their top guys.
And when you don't have your top guys in the lineup, you can't get top end performances.
And Calgary got the top end performances from their guys, and Winnipeg's guys got injured inside of 10 minutes. And so I think from that point on, it was going to be a challenge for Winnipeg to stay competitive in the series.
Right. It was an uphill battle ever since Scheifele and Laine went down. Poor Hellebuyck, honestly, probably still win the Vezina, but
I hope so.
At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. You don't get that ring on your finger.
No.
Let's talk about one of the series I really haven't watched much, but I've been keeping in touch is Vancouver and the Wild.
Yeah.
Vancouver's up 2-1 in that series. Your friend, what's his name? Z?
Yeah, Z.
He's very happy. Canucks hockey's back.
Yeah, I've been talking with him. He in his mind, Canucks hockey didn't come back until Game 2. But I'm actually surprised that the Canucks are winning the series because, and that's coming from someone who picked the Canucks to win the series.
Yeah,
and
right.
someone who was roasting the Minnesota Wild last week. But I watched Game 1, and Minnesota looked outstanding in Game 1.
They did.
And my concern about the Canucks in this series was I don't know if the young guns are going to be able to get to playoff form fast enough.
Right,
because
I agree.
if you fall down 1-0 like they did, that puts pressure on you to win Game 2. If you fall down 2-0, you're done. As we saw, the teams that have fallen down 2-0, the Rangers are already out. The Panthers are going to be out in about 15 minutes.
Less than that.
Yeah.
At this point, it's like 10 minutes.
So when they lost Game 1, not just that they lost Game 1, but the way that they lost Game 1, where they were, frustrated. I don't think Pettersson was able to touch the puck for more than 2 seconds without getting bodied.
No, they definitely were able to. Like, Dumbo was excellent. Parisi, Suter, all these guys were just.
And Stalock looked solid. Stalock got a shutout.
Yeah, he looked great.
And so from that point on, I was worried about how Vancouver was going to show up in Game 2. But they came on strong in Game 2.
They pushed hard in Game 2.
I believe they actually fell down early in Game 2 and came back and won the game. I believe Minnesota scored first.
Maybe, I think so.
If my memory serves me correctly.
Don't quote us on that.
But yeah, don't quote me on that, but I believe that's what happened. And in Game 3, they looked pretty strong.
They looked dominant in
and
Game 3.
Once again, I think it's to the point now where after a couple of games under their belt, it doesn't look like the young guns are out of their element. No. Quinn Hughes scored a goal. He's looked good.
JT Miller with that beautiful snipe.
And I mean, when Louis Eriksson's in the lineup, I mean, how can it go wrong for the Vancouver Canucks?
I follow this one guy on Instagram, and he loves Louis
Nux
Eriksson.
Memes. Shout
you
out.
Follow too?
Yeah, shout out Nux Memes.
Louis Eriksson is a terrible contract, but they're 2-0 with him in the roster. So,
yeah, there you go. Our top professional insights. The Vancouver Canucks are undefeated in the playoffs with Louis Eriksson in the lineup.
Thank you, Nux Memes.
We'll see how long that one holds up.
But I think Markstrom has definitely kind of got it together. He's looked excellent these last 2 games, and I think the game they played today, I think Minnesota's done. Like we both have said, they're on the decline. The only saving grace is Dumba and Suter, but Dumba will be traded probably, and Suter's stuck in that contract for.
Yeah, well, we said Minnesota's kind of that team that's like mired in just mediocrity, and that basically means qualifier elimination, first round elimination, narrowly missing the playoffs, like we talked about last week. Yeah. And it looks like it's going to be more of the same, and it looks like they're going to get knocked out here in the qualifier round.
Yeah, exactly.
I will give them credit that they started out strong, and it looked like maybe they could have pulled something off, but I think that outside of that, the first 80 minutes in the series.
Yeah.
They really haven't looked the same, and it looks like the Canucks are going to move on. And then just very quickly, obviously the qualifier rounds are going to get the majority of the talking points, but your impression on how the round robin has gone, any teams that you want to highlight for good play, bad play, anything else?
Obviously the Avalanche are my team to win. They have been for about a year now. I've liked them since that awful year they had, and then they bounced back the year after, made the playoffs. If you're an Avalanche fan or even a hockey fan, you know that year that I'm talking about, the 16, 44, and 7 or something like that. They're 2-0. They look great. They look good against the Blues. They look good against the who else did they play?
They played the Blues.
Dallas.
And they played Dallas.
They
beat Dallas with 4-0 or something.
Yeah, they
like
shut
that.
him out. So it doesn't help that Bishop wasn't playing that game and he's out.
Yeah.
A team that's kind of surprised me is the Blues. They're kind of surprising me in all the wrong ways.
Yep.
They're what, 0-2?
They're 0-2. They lost to Colorado.
They lost to
Colorado 2-1 on that literally last second goal.
That was a beautiful goal. That now, and there's a Nazem Kadri coming back to fight Toronto in the ass.
And then they were outplayed by Vegas. They almost won that game, but Vegas was able to pull off the comeback.
I got a lot of questions about the Blues. Yeah, you're defending Stanley Cup champions. Yeah, you were number 1 in the West at one point, and in the Central you're number 1. What is going on? Are you rusty?
I think it's hard to match that intensity of the playoffs because you look at on the Eastern Conference side, the 1 seed is also the 2 1 seeds are both 0-2. The Blues are 0-2 in the West. The
Tampa didn't win?
Oh, sorry, no, the Bruins are the 1 seed. The Bruins are 0-2. Tampa's the 2 seed. They're 2-0.
They're 2-0. So. And the Flyers are 2-0.
The Flyers are 2-0. Washington has a 1 point because they lost in a shootout.
Shootout to Tampa. The first shootout in playoff history.
Yep.
It was very odd to watch, but, good on Tampa for getting that done.
Well, and here's the thing. Personally, I haven't watched much of the round-robin games. I think I've watched maybe 5 minutes of a couple games here and there.
Yeah.
Just because my focus has been on the qualifiers because it's been – once again, assuming, because I haven't really watched a lot of the round robin, but I'm assuming that that's going to be the better hockey because it's that playoff intensity. So I wouldn't read too much into it, but I definitely agree with you that St. Louis hasn't looked too strong, not just in terms of results, but they were genuinely outplayed pretty badly by Vegas when you look at sort of the stats.
And Colorado, too. They were pretty outplayed there. Granted, Binnington saved that game, but Kadri just kind of ripped into the hearts. So quick side note. I think the Philadelphia Flyers are definitely ones. I think they're gonna make the finals this year.
They're deadly. Very good.
Brian Elliott and Carter Hart and net look absolutely deadly.
They've looked very good.
They do, and I think that's a team that's kind of not surprised us because we said if they went either way, we wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, we were talking about how they'll either be dominant or they sort of fall back a little bit. It doesn't surprise me that they're battling for that 1 seed.
Right.
And it'll be very interesting because I think that the 1 seed especially, well, actually, the one seed on both sides could be very important. And once again,
Exactly.
I don't want to write off teams like Chicago and Montreal again,
But
at the same time, it's going to be a different series coming up against Edmonton or Pittsburgh that have a lot of pretty glaring issues where, if you look at the 2 round robin games are the 2 undefeated teams playing each other. So you'll see St. Louis play, no, not St. Louis. You'll see Colorado play Vegas for first spot in the West.
Yep.
And you'll see
Tampa
Philadelphia play Tampa for first place in the East.
I think Tampa wins. Philadelphia wins that game.
And the way the series are looking to go, and once again, Edmonton and Pittsburgh can very much win 2 games in a row.
So can Toronto.
So we're not counting them out. Yeah, so can Toronto. I'm just talking about the 12 seeds here because
my bad.
if the 12 seeds move on, then they're guaranteed to play the 1 seed in the next round.
And they're going to get hammered.
And so, well, if you ask these teams, like if you ask the Colorados and the Vegases and the Phillies and the Lightning, would you rather play the Carolina Hurricanes or the Montreal Canadiens? Would you rather play the Vancouver Canucks or would you rather play the Chicago Blackhawks?
Exactly. I'd rather play the Chicago Blackhawks. I think the Canucks are just a little bit more deadlier than they are.
And that's why, not that there are any sort of free series. Like, it's not like the NBA where you look at these 1 seeds and, like, they're pretty much guaranteed to sweep in the first round.
Lakers. What's going on with them right now?
Well, yes. My point, I'm looking at, like, for example, the Bucks in the first round in the East are going to play a team that's below 500.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's basically, like, once again, there's no such thing as a free series, but
as
the
close
Milwaukee
as you
Bucks
can.
are going to get to as close as a free playoff series as you can. And honestly, even the Toronto Raptors, like, even you look at the championship year last year, like, yeah, they lose game 1 to Orlando, but then after that it was really 4 easy wins that they didn't really have to work too hard for.
Exactly.
No, I'm not saying that these teams are going to get 4 easy wins against Chicago or 4 easy wins against Montreal, but they would much rather play those teams. And so I think that those last round robin games are going to be very interesting, particularly those 2 for seeding, especially now that they look at the qualifiers and they see that there are 12 seeds who are going to move on.
I agree, and I think if you're Vegas or Colorado and you win the West and you're looking at a team, say Montreal wins, say Chicago wins, you're like, okay, so not only have you played like 4 games, your guys are older. Like McKinnon is going to outplay Kane.
Yeah.
Landeskog will outplay Taves. Like these are teams that, well, they're in the top 4 for a reason. Like these are the absolute best teams in the league right now, and I don't think that's going to be stopped. Yeah. Even though Boston looks shaky, Washington looks shaky. Even
Boston
St. Louis
looks very shaky.
I know I don't know what's going on with Rask. He was unfit to play. He had a cough, and so they had to quarantine him for 2 days. He needed 4 negative results to come back to play, so it's good to go. Good to know that he's okay. Boston's gonna dominate. It's gonna be either Philadelphia or Boston in the finals, in my opinion.
Yeah, in that East final, and yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if you see that. But I think that once again, these dominant teams in the qualifiers might be able to carry that momentum, but it'll be very interesting to see. Obviously, this qualifier round ends this weekend, and then we'll get into the first round proper next week. And I think that by the time we record episode 3 next week, we'll have watched a couple of game 1s, so we might be a little bit biased when we eventually make those predictions because we'll have a game to see. But it'll be very interesting to see what these round robin teams do in those game 1s because to see if they're going to be able to pick up that intensity right away.
5-1 Islanders got the insurance empty netter. That's it. That's going to be it. There's 2 minutes to go. Goodbye, Florida. I never really liked you anyways.
There you go. So we have the 6 seed Hurricanes and the 7th seed Islanders moving on in the East, and you have the 8 seed your 8 seed Flames moving on in the West, and that's where that sits. And I think that just to wrap up today's episode, last week we talked about sort of what was a dark horse team that you had and what was sort of a favorite team that you had. And so this week, the question I want to ask you is, what is one team that you are happily surprised by, and what is one team that you are disappointed in and think that they're so overperforming and an underperforming team for you?
Overperforming, I'm going to go with Chicago. They may be way in over their heads, but man, they have fun hockey to watch. Watching Edmonton lose, because Edmonton was way the favorites. Watching Edmonton lose kind of brings a smile to my face. I kind of enjoy overrated teams. And then you can argue that Toronto was underperforming. I'm not going to put them in here, though. I'm going to actually put in my underperforming, uh, well, they're already eliminated, was the Jets. If we're talking about teams right now, I say underperforming is St. Louis or Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh should not be down in no way since 2-1 to Montreal. Having a hot carry is not an excuse for a line with Crosby, Gensel, Sheary, and then Malkin on the second. It's no excuse.
Yeah.
It's the same situation as Toronto. It's a hot goalie, good defense on the other side, and it's going to be frustrating to watch. For you, I'm not going to be able to watch it. I'm at work. So if the Leafs lose tonight, I won't be upset. I'll drink maybe a little bit tonight to get the memories of the past. It's not for you because you're a Pens fan, but as a Leaf fan, it's just the same charade over again. It's you make the playoffs, you win a few games, you give us hope. Okay, we're out next year, and we do the same thing for every year.
I think Steve Dangle had a really good analogy for it with his video last night, talking about like the Zoomobile, and he was talking about how he used to work at the Toronto Zoo and he would do the tours, and he said that he hasn't worked there since 2012, I think he said, but in the video he was still able to rattle off like the first 2 minutes of his zoo speech.
Right.
And he's like, why do I still remember that? Because I did it every day for so many years that, you hear the same thing over and over again and it sticks with you. And he's comparing that to him as a Leafs fan has heard the same thing over and over again. Where it gets stuck in his head of he's so used to the, glimmer of hopes here and then, they throw it away, or the same habits come back and cost them games.
Well, last night when watching the game, I was more upset over that third goal being scored than the overtime goal. The overtime goal, at that point, I just become numb. I just kind of looked at it, went, great, and then I went on with what I was doing.
The Blue Jackets were playing better at that point, and they looked like they were going to be the team more likely to score.
Sheldon Keefe said it best, as he said, we got what we deserved, and he didn't like the game since the very beginning of that puck drop. Even though they were up 2-0 at one point, he hated the way they were playing.
And it'll be interesting to see what they do in Game 4. And like we said at the top, when I said, we won't be warming the bench for too much longer. Obviously, we're not going to be getting into the games, but I would be very surprised if we didn't see some sort of lineup changes across a couple of different teams. Like I said, myself as a Penguins fan, I'm waiting for the starting lineup to come out because I want certain players out and certain other players in. For me, I'm going to say that
who's overperforming for you?
Yeah, so for me, the team that I'm going to pick as a team that is overperforming, I'm going to take Columbus, just because I know I predicted them to challenge Toronto, but I was sort of predicting them to challenge Toronto because I knew that they could play up to that level. It's just a matter of if they did it or not. And I see that they've absolutely played up to that level, and they've really challenged Toronto. I think Game 1 they were the better team, and I think that the second half of Game 3 they were the better team.
I think I would argue that the whole Game 3 was all Columbus. They just kind of had they just goaltending, I would argue, let them down in that one.
And I think it's one thing where if you look at the Blackhawks, they weren't necessarily the better team all the time. They were definitely the better team in Game 1.
Yeah, exactly.
In the other games, it was very much 50-50. I think with the Penguins and the Habs, I won't say that the Habs have sort of outplayed us. I think that they've just taken advantage of the situation a lot more.
I agree.
And it's been more 50-50. But with the Columbus series, I've seen stretches in play where Columbus was the dominant team, and it was obvious that they were the dominant team. And so that's why I'm going to pick them as my overperforming team. And then as a team that I've been a little bit underwhelmed by, and I really don't think that they've played up to what they're capable of. Well, there's so many ways that I could go.
Yeah.
But I mean, I like I said, I could pick Pittsburgh, but I think I wouldn't say anything that you hadn't already covered.
Right.
I could say Toronto, but once again, I wouldn't say anything new that you already covered. And even with Edmonton, I don't think I'd say anything new than what I've already covered. Like, Edmonton needs to show that they can win the 3-2 hockey game and that they can count on their stars leading from the defensive side of the play as well.
So, who are you picking as your underwhelming?
So, for my underwhelming team, I think that those three are very obvious. But maybe as kind of a under-the-radar sort of underperforming team is I'm gonna say the Predators, just because I don't think that they've played badly. I just think that they've missed their opportunities, and I really think that if you watched the 3 games that they've played already in the series, and you were to cut out the goals, and you were to ask which team do you think won the hockey game, I think most people would say that the Predators would have won the hockey game.
I agree.
It's just a matter of the fact that they weren't finishing on those chances, and Arizona was. So I think that I've been disappointed by the Predators, not in terms of how they've played, but in terms of what that has resulted in. Because I think that they played well enough to be up 2-1, but the reality is that they're down 2-1. And so maybe they're sort of my disappointing team, not because they haven't played well, but because their level of play hasn't equaled the results that they're probably deserving of.
Exactly. Who quickly, just to wrap this up,
Who do you have winning each game tonight? Game 4.
Yeah, that's big.
Let's go Montreal-Pittsburgh. Quick, let's do this as quick as we can. Who do you got winning that game?
If Jack Johnson's in the lineup, Montreal. If Jack Johnson's a scratch, Pittsburgh.
Columbus-Toronto. If Cody Cece's in the lineup, Columbus.
You know what? I want to say Toronto,
but I know
because I think that they'll come out and play well in this game. Toronto.
Arizona, Nashville. Canucks and Minnesota.
I think the Canucks close it out.
What other teams are there right now playing? Well, obviously the Islanders have already won, and then there's one more.
What's the other series that's 2-1 right now that hasn't been played? No, I think that's all of them.
Really? That's all?
Yeah, because you have the Panthers and the Islanders playing right now.
Well, that game's finished. It's over.
Yeah, and then, so congratulations to the Islanders officially. Then the Predators and Coyotes are getting underway right now. And then following that will
Edmonton
be
and Chicago.
Oh, Edmonton and Chicago, right.
Who do you have winning that?
Oh, that one's tough, That one's tough, because I can see it going both ways.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that Chicago has the ability to close out the series. I'm going to go Chicago. Do you agree on any of those?
I'm going with the Islanders. Something in my gut just says. I'm going with Nashville to win this one, but I'm going with Arizona to win Game 5. I'm going with Montreal to win it. I hate Montreal, but Pittsburgh just hasn't shown me.
Yep.
I'm going with Chicago, as yourself. I'm going with Columbus.
Wow.
Obviously, I want the Leafs to win. Realistically, the way they played, they're not winning.
Yeah.
And if they play that again, they're not going to win. Columbus is going to win tonight, and I think Canucks will close the series out.
Wrap up the series there. So there you go. Next week, like we said, the qualifier round will be over.
Yep.
There's also the second stage of the NHL draft lottery on Monday.
Yep.
So Monday we will know where Alexis Lafreniere is going to be playing.
Oh, that's so weird to
it
think.
could be very scary because right now there's about a 38% chance that he's going to Pittsburgh, Toronto, or Edmonton.
Also, quick shout out to Henrik Lundqvist, who may have played his last game in a Ranger. Too bad he sat it on the bench. I feel bad for the guy. Rest in peace to his career.
Yep.
All that for nothing.
Yeah, and so next week we will sort of wrap up the end of the qualifiers, and we'll start talking about the first round of the legitimate Stanley Cup playoffs. We'll talk about predictions and matchups there. Yeah, legitimate maybe in some brackets. But
yeah, it's been great. Thanks, guys, for listening. We'll get it up on YouTube as soon as we can.
Yeah, so in terms of a little bit of some administration stuff, you can find us on YouTube. You can find us on iTunes or Apple Podcasts.
Yep.
And obviously you can find us on Podbean, which is where the original episodes are hosted. Just search Benchwarmer Sports Talk into any of those platforms, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and you will be able to find us. And we'd love any support that you can show, whether that's a like or a 5-star review. That would be much appreciated. And we thank you for watching episode 1 and also watching this episode today.
Yeah, we appreciate it, guys. Keep up the support. We'll give you the good content so you can have an hour of debating or arguing or disagreeing with our opinions, and that's okay. So thanks, guys. We'll be back again this time next week, and have a good day.